Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer. Today we're here for something that is very, very exciting because it's something that I think we've all been waiting for a little bit of information on recently, and that is the rumors of a third expansion for Civilization VI or just more DLC or anything of that sort. And I'm glad to say that we finally do have some news regarding that, and I figured I'd bring it to all of you because although this news has been out for a few days, it doesn't seem like it's been, spreading that much, so I figured I'd let you all know just to, kind of get it out there. And since these videos can sometimes be kind of clickbaity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the TLDR at the very start of the video and then actually go into some, analysis and theory crafting after that. So for those of you who are just here for the straight facts, well, you'll get them right now. So what we know with regards to this extra expansion here is that recently, a few days ago on February 19th, there was a new DLC that was added to the list of the other 14 DLCs that are available on Steam for Civilization VI. So, I mean, for one, I didn't even realize that there were technically 14 DLCs, but there are, and now there are 15. As far as information for this database is concerned, we really don't have much. The only thing that we know is that it's titled Runner right now in the Steam database, so I'll go into some theories on what that has to do with anything a bit later on, but that's what we have as far as the database is concerned. So this means that there definitely is some kind of DLC coming. No idea if it's a small DLC, an expansion, or things like that, or maybe it's even just like a music pack or something like that. But no guarantee on that. But there is definitely something coming out within the near future. Also, there have been 10 achievements that were recently added into Steam for Civilization VI. They are just kind of named very generally, like STK1 underscore, I think like 04 or something. I'll put them up on the screen here. But these were added a few days ago as well. Actually, they might have been a little bit older. But either way, 10 achievements that are currently put in Steam for the game that are currently hidden, so we don't really know what they are. But presumably, these will correspond with whatever DLC or expansion is coming out. The only other one thing that I want to mention as far as, the straight facts is that PAX East is happening on February 27th, so that means there's a good chance that we'll hear something within the next week as far as, an official announcement for this or something, because it wouldn't surprise me if at PAX they announce what this actually is, so be looking out then for any further announcements and news of that sort. Alright, now let's get on to some of the theory crafting and, my expectations for what I hope to see from another DLC or another expansion or things of that sort. So, first let's talk about, do we think this is going to be a DLC or just like a full expansion or just like a smaller DLC? And based on the information that we have now, I want to say that it's just going to be a smaller DLC, and the reason that I'm saying that is I'm basing it off of the fact that there were 10 achievements that were added. So, obviously, it doesn't necessarily imply that these 10 achievements are the only ones that are corresponding to this DLC, but if they are, then this probably isn't the full expansion, because Gathering Storm had 50 achievements and Rise and Fall had 38, so 10 is pretty low for a full expansion. So that's one thing that makes me think that maybe this isn't, like a full-blown third expansion, but rather some, just like a smaller DLC sort of thing, like maybe with a few leaders and scenarios or things like that. As I mentioned though, just because there are only 10 achievements in there now doesn't mean that they can't add more, in the next few months or even in the next few weeks or anything like that. So, although this is what I think of it now, it's definitely prone to being able to be changed. As far as whether I would like to see a smaller DLC or a full expansion, honestly, I'm kind of leaning more towards the side of smaller DLC that kind of ties everything together with Civilization VI, just because in Civ 6, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of things going on in Civ 6 already with, you have governors, you have loyalty, you have natural disasters, you have power, you have districts, you have just a ton of different systems that are all in there right now. You have religion, you have diplomacy, and the thing is, a lot of these systems don't do a very good job of integrating with each other, and some of them, don't feel the most polished, so what I would like to see, rather than like a full third expansion that adds, 5 more systems into the game or something like that, is rather like a smaller DLC that adds, a few leaders that work really well with a bunch of these mechanics that were added in the other expansions, and then just a thing that, kind of polishes up and ties together all the other systems that were added. So maybe it's a rework of religious victory to make it more fun, and maybe something that, deals with diplomatic victory that ties it together a little bit more with some other mechanics in the game, things of that sort that just kind of bring everything together and really make Civ 6 like a final, final polished product that's really, really tied together well and just is a full package all in one. So along those lines, I mentioned I'd like to see some more leaders. I wouldn't mind seeing a few more units as well, just because this is something that, every time I get asked about it on stream, it's one of the things I say whenever people ask what I would like to see from Civ 6, and that's just some more granularity to the units, just because, as I always point out, in Civ 5, you go from warriors to swordsmen to long swordsmen to musketmen to riflemen to Great War infantry and then to infantry. Meanwhile, in Civ 6, you go warrior, swordsman, musketman, infantry. Like, there's a lot less variety in the units, and it makes it so that a lot of the combats are very one-sided just because you get huge power spikes from having one tech level up on a military unit, as opposed to Civ 5 where the power spikes from each level were more granular. So that way, if someone was ahead of you, obviously you were at a disadvantage, but you weren't going to get totally smacked. So more granularity and more units and things like that, I think, are also a really, really fun thing that they could add into the game. Enough about what I want to see from another expansion, though, and let's actually talk about what people are saying might be contained in this DLC or expansion that is currently in Steam. So there are a few theories here, some of them a little bit more valid than others, and, some of them I really just like and I think are funny, which is probably the last one that I'll go over. So for one, as far as content, I've seen some people talking about how this might be a plague-related DLC, just because I believe it was in Gathering Storm, whenever they added the Black Death scenario, that, honestly could have served as, like, a starting point for a future expansion, and that's something that, Civ has done for a long time. Like, they'll add in small elements, especially with Civ 6. If you look at the progression of leaders that were added, a lot of the city-states that were in the game were kind of like hints at what leaders would be added later on in the future. So, like, I'm trying to remember exactly what city-states there are, but if you go even and look back through some of my city-state videos, you'll notice that a lot of the time the leaders that were eventually going to be added already had their capitals in the game as city-states. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Plague DLC that was added that was based off of how that Black Death scenario had worked whenever it was released in Gathering Storm. Also, something that's a little bit funny with this idea about the DLC is that some people have been theorizing that this DLC was originally supposed to come out earlier or be announced, but they've delayed it because of the coronavirus outbreak, and, they don't want any political repercussions for, releasing a Plague DLC whenever there's the coronavirus outbreak, but I'm not really going to comment on that too much. I'm not going to get into anything political. I really don't think that that's the case, but I could be totally wrong. You never really know. But either way, that's just what some people are saying, and I don't know. I just kind of think it's a little bit funny. Also, another idea for what the contents of this DLC could be, I've seen some people talking about it being Olympics related, just because, runner, obviously you have runners in the Olympics, and maybe they would add in something like that, which is more like a late game thing. Maybe it's even a new victory type. Maybe it ties to diplomatic victory or something like that, where you train athletes, and then if your athletes are winning the Olympics, then you get diplomatic victory points or something like that. I think that would be an interesting idea, and honestly, I think that'd be a cool way to spice up diplomatic victory, depending on how they implement it, but there's really not much of a basis for this theory yet, just because, all that it's going off of is the fact that the database is named Runner, and that really doesn't say too much in itself. It kind of can, just because if you think about it, before Gathering Storm came out, it was teased as Vesuvius, which, obviously a reference to Mount Vesuvius, which is kind of a reference to the natural disasters thing, so maybe this actually could have some truth to it, because I could see them adding in an Olympics thing and just kind of using that for diplomatic victory, or even, any other number of uses, and that could be like a very small DLC, as I had talked about, and it would add a little bit of a small system that ties in with some other things, but it wouldn't be too huge, and, I think, for that reason, I think that this theory is slightly possible. It's probably not, highly probable, but it definitely does have at least some merit to it. And the last theory that I want to talk about the title of the database, is about this being a possible cyberpunk / Blade Runner themed DLC, where it focuses more on the future era and adds in some serious future techs and things like that, and to kind of make everything a little cyberpunkish. This one, I really don't think that this one is kind of true. I really don't think so, just because, for one, they recently added a lot of extra future era things into Civ 6. I believe that was with Gathering Storm, so I wouldn't imagine that they're going to go off of that again and add even more future things into the game, because things that are really lacking in Civ 6 right now are the mid game and the late game. Not the super late game, but the middle part of the game, where you're not starting to win your science victory or your culture victory, but you're just kind of gradually building things up in order to get to the point where you can start to actually win those things. So I think that adding more stuff to the late game is kind of a pointless thing, and I don't think that they're going to do it, just because it already has, some merit to it in the game. But either way, people are theorizing about this as well, but this is not one that I particularly think is true. And last, but certainly not least, we have another theory that is revolving around the title of Runner, and this one actually doesn't have to deal with the content of the DLC, but rather the release date. So, ironically, put on your tinfoil hats here, because this DLC was put into the Steam database at 21:15 on February 19th, and like about 30 minutes later, your boy Ed Beach put out a tweet, and this is what it says right here. So as you can see here from this tweet from Ed Beach is a runner, and he is actually taking part in the Boston Marathon, which happens to be on February 20th of this year. So an interesting thing here is that the leaks about Vesuvius were roughly 2 months before the release of Gathering Storm, and much like with this leak right here is roughly 2 months before the Boston Marathon. I can't remember if I said it or not, but that's on April 20th. So I'm mostly convinced by this theory, honestly, just because I feel like it's something cheeky that like Ed Beach and the other people at Firaxis would do to kind of cheekily hint at the fact of when this DLC is going to come out. So I believe that this DLC is going to come out on April 20th. I think that we're going to hear some more information about it at PAX East later this week. And if it doesn't come out on April 20th, I'm going to select 2 random commenters from this video, and I'm going to give you a free copy of the DLC if it does not come out on April 20th. So be sure to comment on the video below. But yeah, either way, this is probably my favorite theory, just because Ed Beach has been very involved with, the release of Gathering Storm and Rise and Fall as well. He does the streams with some of the other people from Firaxis, and he's generally very, open and receptive to the community, and he gets involved, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is, a little way to kind of hint at what's to come. So, for this reason, I'm pretty convinced that this actually has, this has the most substance of any of the other theories that I've talked about today, but either way, that's all we know about this potential DLC right now. If you have any theories or anything you want to talk about, feel free to have discussion in the comment section below. But thank you everyone for watching. I've been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for some more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.